Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 220 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today I am so excited to talk with you about a topic that we don't cover enough on this podcast. So I'm going to change that, and that is client delivery. And today I want to talk with you about increasing the value of your client delivery, both for your clients and ultimately for your own business. So you could charge more, so your end clients get more value and increased results and impact out of the work that you do, and ultimately so you feel more fulfilled as well. So I'm excited to dive into this week's topic, which is the 3-part framework to increase the value of your client delivery. And what's also making me really happy and excited to share this with you is I've built some AI prompts to share with you that you can leverage to put today's episode into action. So that is going to make it even more implementable than usual. So I'm really excited. I'll start peppering in a lot more of these AI prompts as we go forward as well in the podcast. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And I'm excited to dive into the topic. But before we do, I thought I would give a quick update. I'm working on so many exciting projects. I cannot wait to share them with you. I've been giving a little bit of sneak peeks in my weekly email, which comes out on Fridays. It's called The Independent. If you're not on my email list, go subscribe. I don't personally love getting a lot of emails, but the emails that I do subscribe to personally, I find them, I'm really picky, but I find them so valuable and would love the opportunity to send you a weekly email and see if you find it valuable as well. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes. But I've been sharing a little bit of sneak peeks of what I'm working on to create more tools to help more of you to be successful in growing your business, in making more money, in feeling more fulfilled, in feeling less self-doubt. Anyway, some of those tools have to do with some AI specific tools. Some are physical products and some are coaching experiences. So I'm excited to reveal all of that to you as we get closer to them being available. But in the meantime, I just felt a little inspired to give you a sneak peek. Anyway, let's dive into today's topic, which is all about that 3-part framework to increase the value of your client delivery. And so we're going to talk it from an agenda perspective. First, I'll share with you, just to start out, and share with you what I see so common with the thinking that we have with respect to client delivery, just so that, it can be a very lonely business that we've modeled, that we've chosen to implement as consultants. So I always love to share what I see from a trends perspective across consultants that is so common, and so that it just normalizes it, that if you're feeling this way about your client delivery, you're not alone. And then I will share with you what the 3-part framework is. And then we'll dive into each of the 3 parts of the framework for increasing the value of your client delivery one by one. And we'll talk about what it is. And I'll share with you an example of how to leverage that piece of the framework to improve and increase the value of your client delivery. And then I'll share with you an AI prompt that you can use to help you to implement that piece of the framework. And then we'll wrap it all up with next steps to put this episode into action. So that is the agenda for today. Before we dive in, I want to point you to a companion resource. In addition to the AI prompts that I'll share with you, the companion resource that I recommend that you leverage for today's episode is my book, Grow Your Consulting Business, the 14-step roadmap to make your independent consulting goals a reality. If you haven't yet purchased it on Amazon, I would highly recommend going over and doing that. I think it's around $25 or so at the moment. So you can find it on Amazon in, I think, virtually every country. And the reason why I'm pointing you to this is because chapter 14 is all about turning your client delivery into an asset. And when I was working with my publisher on the book, that was their favorite chapter because it's something that they hadn't seen before in the market in terms of that piece of building a consulting business and thinking about your delivery, not only for your clients and the value to your clients, but also as an asset for your own business. So if you haven't yet read the book, purchase a copy, go grab that and look at chapter 14, which is a great complement to what we're going to be talking through today. Okay, with all of that, now let's dive into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, which is that 3-part framework to increase the value of your client delivery. So let's start off and just paint a picture here. What I hear so often from independent consultants that I work with and that I talk to, I talk to a handful of consultants on a daily basis. This is where I live and breathe. And so what I see as a common challenge that I hear from so many consultants is they tell me, I feel shaky landing the work, but after I land the work, I feel so confident delivering. And I hear that across the board, almost everyone. I could probably count on one hand the times that someone has said to me, I feel a little bit shaky in delivering my work. I don't feel confident as a consultant. I don't feel confident implementing, work with my clients. I don't hear that very often. Now, let me just say that I think 2 things are true. Number one, as I peel back the layers with consultants, they are truly confident. You would probably tell me how confident you are once you land the work, how much more confident you feel delivering the work. I think that's truly true. And I would say that of myself as well. But I think it's also true. And I hear this so often once we start peeling back the layers, that it's so common that consultants feel very confident, kind of at the macro level, let's say, of that they'll be successful in delivering the work. And at the micro level, it's so common for consultants to question if they're adding enough value or if the client is thinking they're adding enough value or earning their rates or their pricing, or if the client is questioning if someone else could be doing it better. Oh, I wonder if I should have hired Accenture or McKinsey to do this work. Or I wonder if someone internally could be doing this work, or if I would do it better, all of those types of things. So for you, can you relate to this? Would you say, if I asked you, your level of confidence in delivering the work is very high, and you can relate to that normal self-doubt that comes into play when you are on an engagement and maybe you had a tough meeting with a client and you're questioning if you're adding enough value, or if you made a really big mistake and the client's going to cancel the contract, or if they're wondering if you're worth whatever they're paying you. Both of those things are so common. And so today's episode is really focused on helping you to increase the value of the work you're delivering for your clients so that they accomplish more, so that those clients are seeing the value that you're delivering, and also so that you can see and help overcome those normal self-doubts that you might be experiencing along the way with your client delivery. It would be incredibly uncommon for you to land client work and feel 110% confident throughout the engagement and never question for yourself, whether you're doing a good job. And so today I want to help you with this 3-part framework that will help you not only increase the impact that you're making with your clients, but also to help you to feel more confident and more valuable without needing your, constant reassurances or validation from your clients. All right. So with that, let's talk about that 3-part framework. It's truly not about you collecting more skills, getting more expertise, getting more client validation or client feedback. This 3-part framework I'm about to share with you is, you might not be surprised about this, it's very focused on you building that from the inside out, you building your own confidence so you're not relying on your client to give you praises. It's about you thinking about and creating a practice for yourself to deliver more valuable outcomes to your clients And it's about you building more value even for your own business so that it kind of create an impact for your clients and for your own business at the same time. So what is this 3-part framework? The 3 parts are number 1, driving valuable outcomes. Number 2, driving a valuable approach. And then number 3, basing it off of a valuable identity or a value driven identity for yourself. Listen, this isn't rocket science. The identity part might be surprising to you, but the outcomes and the approach, this isn't rocket science. But what I want to share with you today is that most of the time I find that consultants aren't thinking about these things. And so I want to really highlight this for you today, allow you to take a step back and think about, okay, what am I doing with my clients? And how might I put routines and practices and prioritization around increasing the value to your clients? So let's dive into each one of these individually. We're going to start with valuable of the 3-part framework. We'll start with the valuable outcomes, which is essentially the what you're delivering. For so many of us, we get stuck in the weeds where we get reactive. It's so easy to get reactive. The client asks us for something, we do it. We anticipate the client might ask us for something, we bake that into our plan. And it can be so easy to turn into an order taker. The client did not engage you to be an order taker. They might think they did. They might think they want you to be, to be working with them so that you can do what they're asking you to do on the surface. But ultimately, they didn't engage you for you to do the things they asked you to do. That's an employee. That's a contractor. What they did engage you for is to create an outcome. And so sometimes there's a friction here, right? Because the client is asking you to do certain things and you want to please the client, most likely. And at the same time, what they're asking you to do might be 5 or 10 or even 1% off of the mark. You're the expert. It's on you to balance that tension, that friction, those requests that your clients are making. It's on you to balance what they're asking you to do on a daily basis or what they're asking from you on a daily, weekly basis with what you know needs to happen in order to achieve the ultimate outcome. This is on you. You cannot go back and blame the client. Well, you had me busy working on X and we should have been doing Y. It's your fault that we didn't get where we wanted to go. It's on you. That's what your job is as a consultant, right? And so as we think about this first part of the 3-part framework to increase the value of your delivery, thinking about the outcomes, the ultimate outcomes your client is looking for, and putting a practice in place for yourself and your business that is a forcing function that helps you to zoom out to look at the big picture. You and I both know this. Isn't it crazy how time flies, right? My youngest is turning 10 in the next couple of weeks. And we happened to move from Hawaii to Colorado when I think he was 6 weeks old. That was a brutal experience, but that's a different story. Moving with a 6-week-old is not so much fun, especially across the ocean. Anyway, my point is, he's going to be 10. We've lived in Colorado for 10 years. It feels like we've lived here for, 10 months in some way. And you know this, it can be so easy for a client engagement to just go by so quickly and to not even realize what's happening and pop your head up. And I say this because it's imperative upon you to have a practice in place, a routine in place for your business where you're taking a step back and you're thinking about the big picture for your client and not allowing it to go week after week. And suddenly you look up and a quarter has gone by and you're realizing, oh no, we're 1 or 2 degrees or 3 degrees off of the target here. Because the client has been asking for all these things and I've turned into an order taker and now we're off the mark a little bit. And so putting a practice, what I'm encouraging you to do right now is to put a practice in place. It might look like an hour a week on your calendar to think about the client outcomes and how what you're doing right now might be incomplete or in the slightly wrong direction of helping the client achieve those outcomes. taking a step back and asking yourself, why does the client want the results that we're working toward? Quite frankly, even asking yourself, what are we working toward and why? Reminding yourself of the overall goals. Asking yourself why the client wants to achieve those goals. Asking yourself, what blind spots do I think the client has right now? Asking yourself, how could they achieve the goal more effectively? Asking yourself, how could I stay one step ahead of the client to drive more value for them? And an AI prompt that might support you in this thinking exercise. And we'll put this in the show notes so you don't have to worry about writing this down furiously. Given the following client goal, so then just you're writing out the client goal, you're typing out the client goal and these constraints, you're writing out the constraints, generate 3 innovation solution paths, including pros and cons, potential risks, and first steps for each. Given the following client goal, insert that, type that out, and constraints, type that out. Generate 3 innovative solution paths, including pros and cons, potential risks, and first steps for each. That's a fairly sizable AI prompt. It will get you started on your client thinking. It will get you started on this session for zooming out and thinking about where the client is going, how you can help them get there, get you out of the weeds, help you from turning into an order taker. So that's the first step of the 3-part framework to drive more valuable outcomes with your client delivery. So the second part of the 3-part framework is the valuable approach, your valuable approach. So the first piece of the framework that we're talking about to add more value to your client delivery was the valuable outcomes. That was the what. Now we're talking about the valuable approach. This is the how you're driving and delivering the results for your clients and how to increase the value of that ultimately, both for your clients and for your own business. That's where that chapter comes into play from the book, chapter 14. Let's talk about what is this valuable approach in the second part of the framework. As you're implementing with your work with your clients, you want to be capturing not only the work that you're doing with the clients, but also your framework, your methodology, your unique proprietary method of helping your clients to achieve the goals that they're wanting to achieve. As you do this, not only does it help you and your business because you're capturing your own intellectual property, but it also helps both your current clients and your future clients because you're figuring out, okay, this is the type of result my client is looking for. This is the best practice to get there. This is the way that I could help my clients avoid common pitfalls or recognize their blind spots sooner or overcome internal resistance, whatever it is. You investing time in capturing and evolving and optimizing your own proprietary method as you go, not at the end of the engagement where you tell yourself, oh, when I'm finished with this engagement and I have a little bit of time, I'm going to, really work on my building out a framework or a methodology. No, it's in as you go, in flight. You zooming out, spending time, investing the time for both your client and for your business to really take a step back and think about what are we doing here? What is the how of how we're accomplishing the goals that the client is trying to achieve, is wanting to achieve? And what does that look like? What is my approach? How does this compare to other clients? What might we be missing? And truly capturing that as you go, each step, constantly, refining and thinking about what is your repeatable framework and what does that look like? Maybe there's some kind of decision points in your framework or unique paths based on certain scenarios. It doesn't have to be always exactly the same framework for every single client. Sometimes, you've got some branches within your framework, for example, but really, truly you spending time thinking about the approach and codifying it and capturing it so that it applies both to your clients, your current client, to your business, and to your future clients as well. That's what's adding value overall to that entire ecosystem. Let me give you an example. And I really want to address this both with the example and directly with you right now, which is you might be thinking of yourself as a generalist. And so you might be thinking, well, this doesn't apply because every single project is unique. I want to challenge you on that. You might be a generalist. You might have a fairly wide range of variety within your clients. But I want to challenge you to say, you know what? I would be very confident to say to you that you have a certain approach you take with your clients that is the same, even when their circumstances or ultimate goals are a fairly wide variety. You likely have a similar process with each one of them. For example, making an assessment of their current state and then building out a plan for the future state they want to achieve, and then building the steps of what it might look like. And what unique approach do you take within that? That could be across a variety of different projects. I like to encourage you to think there is definitely a framework here and just go with that assumption versus trying to argue whether or not you have a framework or could even create a methodology. So I want to say that to you because so many of us think, oh, what I do is very client dependent or client specific, or what I do is too much of a generalist. I can't create this type of valuable approach. And I want to say that that is wrong. That's a lie. And really forcing yourself to start figuring this out for yourself, even if you feel like those things might be true for you. Okay. So with that being said, I want to give you an example from my own personal experience, which is when I first started consulting, I was helping startups scale and operationalize their businesses. And that was my main focus. And I truly didn't think about a methodology. I didn't think I had time to be worrying about a methodology. I also thought, as I was working with each client, what I just said to you, that you might be thinking, each project is too unique and this has already been done. Obviously, it's no brand new innovative thing to help startups scale, right? So I didn't spend any time working on methodologies or frameworks. I just go work with a client, figure out things as I went, and not really spend any time on building out frameworks or methodologies or that kind of thing for my business. But when I got to the place where I was ready to take more control over my pipeline and my sales process and not depend on my network, my former corporate network to land clients, I started to realize I need a framework. I need a way to articulate what I do, that I understand, that I have a unique way of helping startups scale, even though it's been done a million times, and to be able to articulate that. So I started really taking a step back and thinking about, okay, how do I just do this? Sometimes it comes so naturally to us, right? What is my approach? Why are startups different? What are the hangups or the common challenges that startups face when they start wanting to get to the place where they're operationalizing the way that they implement for clients and deliver for their own clients? And I started forcing myself to build out frameworks. And I started realizing there are some uniquenesses that I bring to the table. Now, listen, does that mean that there's probably no other company or firm or individual in the world that does it that same way? No. But the unique combination of the way that I approached helping startups scale and my own personality, my own experience, the combination of all of that is a unique approach. And so codifying that and thinking about it and then leveraging it during the course of my implementations and testing it in real life and leverage it for clients for them to see, oh, this is a blind spot, created so much more value for my own clients, my own consulting clients, and ultimately for my business and my sales process and lead gen. I share that story with you to hopefully help encourage you if you feel like what you do is kind of run of the mill, or if you are thinking what you do is too much of a generalist, or if you're thinking that what you do isn't unique. I really want to encourage you to question all of that and push through it and work on developing and codifying and evolving your own valuable approach as you implement, not after you implement, as you implement. So before we move on to the third and final part of the 3-part framework, the AI prompt that you could leverage to start figuring out what is your valuable approach, what is your unique approach. And again, we'll put this in the show notes. You don't have to write this down as I say it, but it would be something to the effect of, based on my experience helping clients achieve XYZ, put that in, generate a clear framework that reflects my repeatable process. And then tell it to include like a name for the framework, 3 to 5 core steps or pillars, a description, even a visual metaphor. Start talking with AI to get yourself to the place. And, for me, I do this type of exercise almost on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis as I'm working through things with my own consulting clients, with my own consultant clients, trying to figure out how to help people more effectively, more quickly, more deeply. This is just a constant thought exercise I love doing with AI. So I would encourage you to do that same type of thing. And it's something that completely evolves. This is not a one and done. This is definitely something that would be, a practice you might want to put in place on a weekly basis, to spend 20 minutes working on your own framework and folding in your learnings from the week on certain client scenarios and constantly evolving it for yourself. So that is the second component to increase the value of your client delivery, is to spend time working on what is your valuable approach, your frameworks, methodologies. And then finally, the third part of your framework to increase the value of your client delivery, both for yourself and your clients, is to work on your valuable identity. This is the way you think of yourself. This is the way you think your clients think about you. This is the way you think your potential clients think about you. This is so important and, quite frankly, at the core of everything we've talked about so far on today's episode and many more episodes, really. You investing time and mental energy on the way you think about yourself then reverberates throughout the way that you are operating, the way that you are approaching your potential clients, your current clients, the risks that you're willing to take, the hard truths you're willing to share with your clients, the pushback you might be willing to say to them. Listen, I know you asked me for X, but I really think we need to have X plus Y, or we need to have Y. And this is why X is not the right approach. Your identity drives all of that. Let me give you some examples. When you go into a client situation thinking of yourself as a subordinate to the client, which would be very common. When you left corporate, you might not have been at the same level as your client. Or perhaps you were at the same level, or maybe you were even above your client if you were thinking about a traditional org hierarchy. But now that you're out of corporate, you don't have a title, you don't have a brand behind you, or a known brand, like Accenture, McKinsey, or BCG. It would be very, very common for you to think of yourself now as a subordinate to your client because of those simple reasons. And of course, if you're going into a relationship with your client, thinking of yourself as a subordinate to them or a vendor to them, you would not be setting yourself up in the best way to have those hard conversations with the client, to take risks in what you're recommending to the client, to give them counter recommendations to what they might be asking you. You might be instead coming at your client delivery from the lens of wanting to please the client, not wanting to rock the boat for fear that they would cancel the engagement or lose faith in you, lose trust in you, not pay their current invoice. It's outstanding. All of those things. That would be so common. So that's why it's so important to focus on your valuable identity when you are wanting to increase the value of the delivery that you're implementing for your clients. Let me give you an example. When I was, again, back to my own consulting days, when I was working with startups, helping them scale, the client would come to me and say, listen, we've got one person implementing our software right now, for example, and implementing the overall program that they were implementing. We need to be able to have more than one, obviously, as we're growing. We need to be able to have a repeatable process for implementing our own software and services. And so we wanted to look like X, Y, and Z. And when I first started, I really saw myself as more of a contractor, not as a consultant. I would go in and do what they asked me to do and do it very well, very detailed, very thoroughly, very repeatably for them. But I started to realize they were not asking me to do all of the things that I knew would ultimately make their organization successful. They were ignoring certain things they didn't want to deal with, or they just simply had blind spots. And for a while, I was worried about rocking the boat. I didn't want to lose the contract. It was the only contract I had, and I had no way of generating more work because I had no business development process in place. So I was an order taker in early days. And I started to realize very quickly that I had to think about myself differently, that I had to think about myself not as an order taker or as a contractor they hired to do a certain set of work and, accomplish a certain project plan, but it was incumbent upon me to make that client successful, that I needed to think about myself differently, that I was an expert advisor to that client to help them to see not only what they wanted to accomplish, but also what they were missing. They had people to do the work, but those people didn't have the right skill sets, as an example. And it was incumbent upon me to talk with the client about those things they didn't really want to face, which is they needed to think about repurposing the people they had onto other roles within the organization, or exiting in some cases those individuals, and really putting in a team that would be able to execute on the next level of implementation that they wanted to do with their own clients, as an example. And that was rocking the boat. But when I started thinking about myself as an expert, as someone who's an advisor to that client, not just a subordinate or extra pair of hands, I was able to set myself up mentally to then be so much more impactful for my own client. And I share that example with you so that you can be thinking about how might you be showing up or thinking of yourself in a way that then enable you to be the most impactful consultant for your own clients. And the AI prompt that you might use here is to put in a little bit of context into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you use, and then ask it, how would a McKinsey partner be thinking about this client relationship? Or how would a Accenture or Deloitte consultant be thinking about this certain client scenario? And use that as a way to just zoom out, take yourself out of your own head, and start thinking about what you're doing from an advisory perspective, from a consulting perspective, from an expert perspective, rather than from the client hired me to do a certain job and I don't want to rock the boat perspective. So that is the third part of this 3-part framework to increase the value of your client deliverables and your client delivery, your client delivery, so that ultimately you're creating more value for your end clients. You are creating more value for your own business. You're starting to think of yourself by default as more valuable and as a peer to your clients. And therefore, ultimately, it makes operating your business so much easier. It makes charging more easier. It makes landing more strategic projects easier. And it helps to support the overall value of your business development process as well. So it's an incredible ecosystem and something that you want to really be thinking about. How do I spend time on a weekly basis prioritizing and investing in this type of thinking? So as we wrap up today's episode, to put today's episode into action, set some time on your calendar to spend time thinking about this 3-part framework, to leverage the AI prompts that I shared with you today. And we'll put those in the show notes for you. And if you want help implementing this, listen, you're an advisor and an expert for your own clients. They need that. And you need it too for your own business. All of us do. If you want help with a thought partner, with someone who can help you see where you've got blind spots, reach out. You can go to consultmelisa.com and set up a coaching exploratory call, and we can figure out if coaching and working together would be a great fit. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, Head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.